Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies, too. Just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country.
Donald Trump and the Trump campaign have gotten all kinds of backlash over racist remarks and quote-unquote jokes made by comedian Tony Hinchcliffe at Donald Trump's rally in Madison Square Garden. Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks broke all of this down. We're going to take a look at clips of Tony Hinchcliffe and what he had to say at Donald Trump's rally. We're also going to take a look at clips from the Young Turks with Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur reacting. I will share my thoughts from time to time as well. Let's get into this together.
It is absolutely wild times. It really, really is. And, you know, there's a lot going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay, all right, okay, we're getting there. Now, again, normally I don't follow the national anthem, everybody.
The Trump campaign is attempting to distance itself from the comedian you just heard from, Tony Hinchcliffe, who is also known as Kill Tony, for his offensive and racist jokes during a rally in Madison Square Garden over the weekend. Now, as you just heard, he called Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage. But as you also just heard, that audience of Trump supporters who go to this Trump rally clearly did not find it funny. And I choose to focus on that. That gives me a little bit of hope in this country and in the electorate. They clearly didn't enjoy it, but we do have more where that came from.
Yeah, and I focus on both. So, look, it's super important to note that the audience groaned, and they groaned so much that he made note of it over and over again. They did not enjoy the set. So do not say that everybody who went to that rally agrees with this guy and thinks along the same ways. And I get it, he's a comic. Terrible so-called comedy. That was not a joke. That was just, isn't it funny to make fun of Puerto Ricans? Or just to insult Puerto Ricans. Where's the punchline? Is the punchline that they're dirty? Is that because garbage? Where's the punchline? So don't give me this garbage about, at one point there was some garbage bill in Puerto Rico, as if he knew that and he's following Puerto Rican politics and he was making a super obscure joke about that. No, it was a very blunt instrument joke. It was dumb. But guys, whether you think it's fair or not fair, the stench of that joke and the other things that were said in that rally are gonna stick to the Republicans. Just like I told you, the McDonald's stunt that he did was a really good PR move, even though there was no substance behind it. He's against higher wages for McDonald's workers, he's against regulations that protect those workers, etc. But it was a good PR stunt and worked really well for him. This is the exact opposite. The audience might have grown, it might be a comic, but it's gonna be terrible for the Trump campaign.
Which is why the Trump campaign is doing everything it can to distance themselves from what happened in Madison Square Garden. In fact, even Peter Navarro's coming out with some pretty harsh language against the comedian. Hinchcliffe is irritated by the backlash he's getting. He thinks that people are humorless. In fact, he was pretty irritated with the audience at this rally. So let's take a look at more.
Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies too, just know that. They do. They do. There's no pulling out. They don't do that. They come inside, just like they did to our country. It's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that, a lampshade? Look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm just kidding, that's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun, we carved watermelons together. It was awesome. You guys are, this is a groany little morning crowd, huh?
Yeah, so they're groany, Tony Hinchcliffe, because you're not saying stuff that's funny and you're saying stuff that's offensive. And him being annoyed, all of the free speech warriors, like these guys like Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedians that say, they can't make certain jokes anymore. He made the jokes. Nobody came and arrested him. The police didn't come up and say, okay, you can't say these things. But there's a difference between freedom of speech in terms of they're allowed to say whatever they want to say. We have that in America. But that doesn't mean people have to like it. And even people in this Trump rally didn't seem to like what he had to say. And another thing with all of this, Donald Trump has, J.D. Vance has come out and said he didn't see, he heard about it, but he didn't see. So, okay. And Donald Trump says he doesn't know Tony Hinchcliffe and he wasn't the one who hired him. Somebody else did. Well, that's probably true that somebody else hired him. But is it not, the buck stops here? And we've seen Trump is not a leader. He doesn't take responsibility, when anytime anything goes poorly, he's not going to take responsibility for that. He's going to blame someone else. But this is something that you'd think eventually, even some of the people who support Donald Trump would say, hey, this guy should own it. Say, hey, I'm sorry that this happened and it won't happen again. And I'm sorry that this guy made offensive comments about different groups of people. This is not what our campaign is about. I mean, that is what the campaign is about, but that's what Donald Trump could say and say, I will see to it personally that there aren't any more comments made like this. But, this is where the Republicans are. They're not an inclusive party, but I mean, how stupid is it to offend Puerto Ricans who, I don't know what percentage of Puerto Ricans are Trump supporters or Trump voters, but this certainly can't help, and also say something offensive about black people. And, we keep seeing things in the media, even though black people are overwhelmingly black voters are going to overwhelmingly vote for Kamala Harris. We keep seeing reports in the media that Donald Trump has increased his percentage of black voters. Well, some of those people maybe would say, hey, I'm not going to vote for this guy when he allows this kind of racist comments to be made at his rallies.
It's tough to follow this audition for the next Commissioner Gordon's over here.
So it's really interesting because, the Trump campaign alleges that his set wasn't vetted ahead of time. That's probably true, but I mean, someone loaded, if those jokes were on a teleprompter, someone loaded on a teleprompter, unclear if they did. But the other thing that I'll just mention is, it's interesting because there are two different campaigns here in this election, obviously. And they have two different approaches that I think are bad when it comes to vetting speeches and performers. So on the Republican end, you have the Trump campaign not doing its due diligence and not ensuring that the comedian has a set that's going to anger even Trump supporters. But then on the Democratic side, you'll have a literal Democratic surrogate who wants to give a quick 5 to 10 minute speech at the convention and will allow the party to vet the speech, but she's Palestinian. So Palestinian surrogate, we can't allow her to speak because we can't risk it.
Yeah, so look, I get some of those jokes, right? And in a different context, someone would be fine. The garbage joke was not a joke. The punchline there was, don't we all hate Puerto Ricans? Again, the crowd groaned there, and they groaned, I thought at exactly the right parts at the watermelon line, right? But they actually didn't groan on the immigration line, and I get it, right? It's a little bit, so that one, if you're a Democrat and you get super offended, I got it. And is this the right context for those kind of jokes? No, right? But the other, the ones that barely jokes that just go, hey, don't we all hate these sets of people? I can't stand those. And I think they're super counterproductive and terrible. But Anna's 100% right. Democrats are too safe and Republicans are too unsafe.
And it hurts both campaigns.
Exactly right. So look, I'll tell you a funny one that's not even, that's like somewhere in the middle. But so I was opening for Bernie one time and I started attacking Hillary Clinton too much back in 2016. And when I started going off on Hillary too much, Bernie started coming out to make sure that they got me off. Okay, so he came from the stage and they started roaring. I was like, oh, I got you. Okay, so even Bernie plays it a little safe, like actually a decent amount safe. Kamala Harris is on the, okay, we're vetting everything, every word, everything has to be a talking point. Remember, the speeches all have to be super boring and uninteresting. And then we bring out a super big celebrity and everybody goes, oh my God, it's Beyonce or Taylor Swift. And everybody go back to the plan, etc. And the Trump rally is like, don't we hate Puerto Ricans and black people, right? And it's like, Jesus, man, these are the options we have. But to me, the Rudy stuff about Palestinians was worse than any joke from a comic.
We're gonna get to that in a minute, but I gotta make another point because, listen, if you're a Democratic voter and you are drinking the Democratic Party's Kool-Aid on how offended you should be about this comedian, I hear you. I found his jokes pretty gross and offensive. And I'm actually happy that the Trump campaign is distancing themselves because usually they don't do that.
Yeah, that's rare.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, for instance, Danielle Alvarez, a senior campaign advisor, told the Washington Post point blank, this joke does not reflect the views of President Trump or the campaign. As I mentioned earlier, Peter Navarro is like trashing the comedian and everything. But look, put that aside. I want to just quickly talk about the difference between rhetoric, which may be gross, which might direct hatred toward a group of people, and actions which honestly lead to more devastation for Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico than anything else. We still have this antiquated 1920s law called the Jones Act, which basically forces Puerto Rico to only accept imports because remember, Puerto Rico is considered part of the United States, and the Jones Act states that, any products that are going from one American port to another needs to be shipped by a US ship, a US owned and made ship with a US crew. And look, this law came about after World War I, and it had a lot to do with national security, right? Because you want to make sure, things are going from one American port to another, it's secure and you don't want a ship that was built by a potential adversary, that kind of thing. But what it's led to with Puerto Rico is inflated costs for energy. It actually complicated the hurricane relief efforts. Now, the Biden administration did a quick one-time waiver for Puerto Rico in order to help them recover from Hurricane Maria. But let's keep it real. Let's actually have a conversation about how both parties, Democrats and Republicans, refuse to reform that law, which is totally battering Puerto Rico as we speak.
So Anna, that's super substantive and correct, but in the context of an election that's about a week away, Republicans, if you don't get that when you call Puerto Rico garbage, that you're going to turn off all Puerto Rican voters.
No, but they do get it. That's why they're distancing themselves from the comedian.
No.
And Anna Kasparian is exactly right about, and Cenk Uygur also, that now you have the politicians like Rick Scott who are distancing themselves from these comments and quote unquote jokes. And it's a real interesting line that they have to play here because the Republicans led by Donald Trump, they've completely built an entire party on insulting people, excluding people, punching down. This is when comedy is not funny is when it's punching down. People tend to not find it funny if people who don't have a huge amount of power are attacked by comedians. It's just not funny. Punching up tends to be more funny. And so the Republicans and, Donald Trump's backtracking from these comments and everything too. And you kind of wonder, is this backlash? Is this just the left and Democrats doing this backlash? Or will it have any real impact on the election? I mean, this close to an election, who knows? But you definitely have some Republicans who are running scared with this and not wanting to be caught up in this scandal. But what do you think about what Anna Kasparian have to say and Cenk Uygur have to say here about Tony Hinchcliffe? Do you think that they are correct in their assessment of all of this? And do you think anything will really come of this? Do you think this, would this be enough to sway the election? Who knows? But when we have a razor thin election like this, or at least that's what the media and the pollsters are telling us, any little bit could help Kamala Harris, and it can't help Donald Trump when they have such a narrow path to victory in terms of having a much more narrow coalition. But let me know in the comments what you think about Cenk Uygur, Ana Kasparian, Tony Hinchcliffe, anything you'd like to comment on. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. My channel's growing very quickly, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It can help me to grow the channel even more and to bring out more content like this. This is Chris on Culture. I will see you in the next video.